Hello, everybody. This is Clinton Bonner, Vice President of Marketing at Topcoder. This is part two of our Future of Work series. We got some great reactions to part one. We titled part one, The Real Future of Work is On Demand and Rooted in Trust. In part one, we focused on the future of work, this discussion around the future of work that's happening, and yet this big kind of scene missing. Everybody's talking about HR, kind of upskilling and retention tactics and things of that nature. And very few people who are, putting on these huge and robust events in the future of work are talking about what is, in our opinion, the star of the show, on-demand talent, the talent economy, the passion economy, where you have amazing and specialized individuals who could work via trusted platforms now to accelerate and help you as an enterprise produce like never before. So you can go to our blog on topcoder.com and check that out, or it's on YouTube. The Real Future of Work is On Demand and Rooted in Trust. And that was part one. So in part two of this Future of Work series, we're going to focus on something that's a little bit tangential to future of work, but certainly right there, and kind of has this interesting Venn, this cross section of things that are happening here. And we're going to focus on remote work. So part two of the series is entitled Remote Work is Booming, so what's next? This series, and particularly this part of this series focusing on remote work, we actually decided to do this, several weeks ago, and it was early January. It's now sitting at March 9th, when the coronavirus was something that was at that point, kind of just happening at that point just in China. It had not spread globally just yet. So just want to say in no way, shape, or form is this meant to be a scare tactic of run to remote work. In fact, we're going to quote some studies that came out earlier this year, where the research was done well in advance of coronavirus even being a thing. However, it's also, you can't duck it. You can't just, say it doesn't exist or not talk about it. It's March 9. It's about 5 o'clock, ET for me. And we just had a terrible day on the Dow Jones that lost about 2,000 points, and oil lost 25% today. These are all realities of coronavirus and just, after effects of that. And, really people just, the markets not knowing what's going to happen next. The reality is some of the biggest companies in America, Facebook, Google, Alphabet, Amazon, especially those in the Seattle area or the Bay Area, they asked their employees, I think they told their employees, don't come to the office, work remote, work from home. And as we'll discuss, the trend towards remote work was already happening, and it just is what it is. The coronavirus has acted as a major accelerant to remote work. So I wanted to bring this up towards the beginning, that there's been a couple of great studies. There was one that was produced by Buffer. It came out, I believe it was in January, and it was titled The 2020 State of Remote Work. So if you're on topcoder.com, if you're on our blog, we'll certainly link to this state of remote work research, and we will remember to put the link inside the YouTube description as well. But this is a fascinating report. It's really, really well done, super simple to kind of get through and read. And, like to give the TLDR version, they set off the first two questions. I'll just go through those. Question one is, would you like to work remotely at least some of the time for the rest of your career? So 98% said yes. That is a staggering number. Only 2%, 2 out of every 100 are saying, nah, I want to go into an office. I don't want to work remote at all. The second question they ask is, would you recommend remote work to others? Again, 97% saying, yeah, they'd recommend it. So if I'm in your shoes and you haven't seen this Buffer report yet, go check it out. There's plenty of great questions they ask, and they get into some more variations of different questions, and how much percentage of time do people believe they really want to work remote versus be in the office. Some fantastic stuff there. But from an overall trend perspective, if you were to say, is remote work gaining popularity or losing popularity? Just look at those first two questions. It is, unequivocally that individuals want more options and more flexibility. They want the ability to work remotely at least some of the time. Then I'd like the opportunity to pair another study close to the onset here by Gallup that came out. So Gallup has this website. It's called Gallup Workplace. So if you go to gallup.com/workplace, you'll find an article that was produced or put out on January 24th of this year. Is working remotely effective? Gallup Research says yes. And there are some really great things to point out in this like TLDR version. So if you don't get to the research, I encourage you to go look at it. We'll link it in the YouTube description, and we'll have it, of course, on the blog on topcoder.com. But the net here is pretty darn simple. You know, CHROs and those in charge of talent, they are after that golden goose of like engaged workers, right? Engaged employees. Because everything that they could possibly see says if an employee is engaged, which probably means that in some psychological way, they are pursuing something that brings them joy. So the studies they're looking at tell them that remote workers, with those with job flexibility, they are engaged workers, and engaged workers drive performance. Engaged workers are the standouts. Engaged workers are the ones who are more effective and more productive. With more flexibility in the job and the option to be remote, you increase engagement. And when they have that, man, oh man, does their performance go up. And go search for the article on gallup.com/workplace. Is working remotely effective? Gallup Research says yes. So I really wanted to bring those two pieces of content and those two pieces of research to the forefront very early in this discussion, because I think they're paramount. I think it's this confluence of people want more flexibility, people desire more remote work, and when they get it, they're more engaged, they're more productive. That is a remarkable combination. And if you're spotting that, if you're a CHRO, if you're, someone who's involved in talent strategy, well, the light bulbs are probably going off for you at this moment. So for anybody kind of going through remote work for the first time or really ramping it perhaps because of coronavirus now, a couple of things I want to put out there. Like number one is like you can absolutely do this. It does take some, shifting of mindset, maybe blocking of calendars and figuring out like how do you use your time? How do you self-motivate? There are elements to it and there are tons of great tips and tricks, but you absolutely can do it. Number two, not only can you do it, you could really thrive in this environment. If you're in a creative position, if you're in a position where you need to sit down and think strategically sometimes and like shut the world off, I don't know about you, but who doesn't love a good airplane ride, maybe cross-country airplane ride where you don't hop on Wi-Fi? And I'm not saying you go off and you watch Godfather Part 2, and burn 4 hours that way. I mean, you do work offline. You do something else that's not tied to, a Slack or a Microsoft Teams or some IM platform. You get the heck out of email. You don't even work in like a, collaborative docs. Maybe you just open up like a Word doc or something and you just do work. And it is, you as an individual taking time to do it. I love the ability to do that. And actually working remotely, I can mimic that quite a bit. And it helps me focus and helps me get things done. The third thing, which I think happens to people once you start working remotely quite a bit, is that it doesn't matter where people sit. As long as you have talent, connections and the ability to access talented, passionate people that are either on your projects or you can get to them when you need them. I will speak for myself, but that's all that's needed. You don't have to be a cubicle away. You don't have to be able to call a physical meeting. Those are niceties sometimes, but they are by no means a necessity for you as an individual to get work done, or if you're managing a team, for your team to be highly productive and successful. So if you realize you can do it and you feel like you can thrive in the environment, and you're kind of coming to the realization that it doesn't matter where people sit and if I'm next to somebody physically, as long as I can access them and work with them and work inside good communication tools, that man, oh man, could we be super productive. If you're kind of like realizing that, or at least believe you could realize that, then the next element I want to introduce is this next little leap that says, okay, let's say you're working remotely with a bunch of your colleagues that are full-time employees. They all, you all work at the same place and you're working effectively remotely. Okay. Now what happens if you're working effectively remotely and some of the people you're working with are full-time employees and some of the people you're working with are freelancers who are coming from talent platforms in the gig economy? What changes? If those people are talented, if those people are passionate, if those people are focused, if those people are helping you succeed, what changes? What really is the difference if everybody you're working with is skilled? If everybody you're working with is in the same tools? If everything you're sharing is allowed to be shared, IP-wise, security-wise, because you're on a platform that can handle those sorts of things? What does it matter if that person is a full-time employee, a colleague of yours that maybe you spend time with in an office from time to time or lots of times, or that person is a virtual worker, somebody that is on an on-demand talent platform? If they are useful to you, then they are useful to you. And those leaders, those that are I would say, ahead of the curve and understand how to wield on-demand talent for their enterprise, they are accelerating not just their career, but they're accelerating their business. They're accelerating products and innovation and ultimately revenue, because it is a way more effective way, a way more productive way to get work done. And remember, we're not talking about like just side hustle work. There's nothing wrong whatsoever making some money delivering for Grubhub or any of those delivery services. That's fine. However, most people, if you have a car, a clean license, and you're reputable and can keep a job, you can do that work. There's nothing wrong with it, but more people can do that work. The kind of work we're talking about content creation, video editing, design, UI, UX design work, development, full stack developers and specialized developers in the most modern technologies, QA engineers, data scientists, C-level consultants. The list goes on and on. These are things, core things that businesses and enterprises need in order to be productive, in order to be effective, efficient, get their work done. Those kind of specialized skills are now, that on-demand labor, it exists. And again, Topcoder is not the only game in town. We've been doing it for a long time. We have a very specific and we think a fantastic way that's equitable to get to great talent and get them on projects so that they can do enterprise level work with you and your teams. And with all that, still, it's not just about Topcoder. There are so many other platforms out there that do things that we don't even do. We don't do content creation as an example. That's not something we do on Topcoder. However, if you want great content from skilled writers, go to Verblio. If you want amazing video content and video editing and great concepts, go to Tongle. Those things, these platforms exist and they serve the enterprise exceptionally well. So these folks, these rock stars on the enterprise level, they're out there. They're doing it already. And I really think they are, to be A, applauded, but B, I think more importantly, kind of studied. More importantly, like, well, how are they doing this? What hurdles have they gotten over? What did they learn? What are some of the dumb mistakes they made while trying to set this up to scale for their enterprise? What kind of red tape did they have to cut through? What can we glean from their experiences? So I want to wrap up part 2 by saying, yes, there is this big boom for remote work. And yes, we can't ignore the fact that coronavirus has accelerated it even further. It was already happening, but now it's been accelerated even further. But what happens next? That's the important thing. Again, it's the realization that when you're working remotely, it just doesn't matter if the people you're working with are perhaps on your team or on different teams in your organization or in a different organization enterprise altogether, or if they don't work for any enterprise, they work for themselves as a freelancer. It's really just about, are they skilled? Are they passionate? Can you use them to help your team focus to get more work done? And enterprise leaders are doing this. There are some amazing, amazing examples out there. One more piece of content that I'll make sure we link into the blog post is something called the OAQ, or the Open Assembly Quarterly. Why I think this piece of content is, so important is because I think it features 4 or 5, maybe even 6 vignettes of enterprise leaders who are doing this. Folks from large enterprise organizations who looked towards the gig economy and the talent economy and said, I believe there are ways I can tap this, and they're telling their stories, and it's really, really valuable stuff. And one last thing I want to recommend to anybody enjoying this Future of Work series, we talked about this in the first part of the series, in fact, is that Topcoder is launching an industry event that we're calling Upriser, UPRISOR.com, but it's a new Future of Work event. We spent the entire first part of this series discussing how folks are talking about the future of work and kind of what's missing in that discussion, and that is, of course, this booming on-demand, this talent economy, and how enterprises are using it. I encourage you to follow us at Topcoder on Twitter, also on LinkedIn, and if you're enjoying this series, topcoder.com/blog. Subscribe to the blog post. We put out a ton of great content, sometimes video, sometimes audio, sometimes, of course, the old school written word, but we put out a lot of great content around these topics that I believe you'll find valuable. Next time, in part 3, we're going to focus on reskilling. There's tons and tons of focus, especially in the current Future of Work talk track, on this idea of reskilling full-time employees. We want to dive deeply into what does that mean, and what happens if you take a different angle at reskilling that we think is actually more appropriate for the real future of work.